Hey, thank you all for keeping the dial right there on the amazing 102.5 FM. And we are in the studio today with Rachel.
Yes.
And I'm so excited because she's helping us to process balance. And while we were off air, we were chatting that out with Reggie for a minute, who does engineering work. In case anybody ever needs a Reggie to do engineering work, that would be he at the amazing 102.5 FM. And just making sure that we're really understanding. So before we move into time, again, balance, Rachel, was definitely in your world, in your perspective as a tool, because somebody else may have it down, as you said, but for you, balance does not mean equal nor the same.
I had to wrap my mind around the fact that balance is gonna, you can use the word balance, but I like to channel rhythm in that balance because then it gives you that thought process of the ebb and the flow. So you talked about, you gave a really good example of rodeo. And during the rodeo season, somebody that has business that's heavily rodeo related, of course, they're going to have more work or professional hours being
at the
taxed.
rodeo, right?
Okay,
Yeah.
so we know exactly when rodeo is every single year.
Yes.
We're looking at our calendar in December,
And we know.
November, the previous year, and we're laying it out. You guys know. So, you know, nonprofit work, church obligations,
Right.
family, they understand.
Yes.
From sun up to sundown, most of the time, I'm going to be
Yes.
at the rodeo during rodeo time.
Yes.
And so it is important to be, and we talked about being proactive versus reactive because a lot of times, and it's still a work in progress, Dr. Gina, I haven't arrived yet with that. But the more you can look ahead and enlist, because you talked about delegating, I do want to touch on that as business owners, as small business owners and nonprofit leaders, our mindset around what we're able to delegate may need to be expanded
Shifted.
or what word am I trying to use?
Challenged, yes.
Because in my mind, you think it may cost so much money, dollar per hour, and in your mind, maybe it's not worth it, but what is the cost?
Yes.
What is the real cost or the return on the investment of getting somebody that's $10 an hour that can do automation or emails or even clean up your inbox, figure out your storage.
Yes. Versus what the time that you're taking to do it.
Right.
Or the loss that you're taking because nobody did see the email that possibly was a client. So it's all intertwined. I like that you said that because I hadn't noticed the proactive and the planning. So balance then is the ebb and the flow and the rhythm. And what Rachel is describing is that in many situations, that rhythm is pretty much set. We know the busy times of the year in certain parts of what we do, like you were saying earlier with the gala. The gala don't shock us. It's not no emergency. It's in November, December, the end of the year, every single year, right? So having a planning meeting can't be classified as an emergency when you already know that's called annual. It happens every year, right? So are many things in our lives, like applications to college normally happens in a certain time. Just ministry, major events, anniversary for the church, y'all know that's the same. So what you were basically describing then is in some ways you're able to be balanced and flow with your ebb and your rhythm by just looking big picture at what you know will happen in your life and give more time to something here but give less time over here because such and such is happening.
Yes, and full disclosure, it becomes these fires that you have to put out and the stress associated with that when I have not looked at that.
Yes.
And part B, things will come up.
Yes.
Things will happen. Things in business, things personally,
all the time,
emergencies.
Yes.
But what structure that you already have for that ebb and flow, the balance, the schedule, things that you do know about, the less likely you are to be derailed. When it relates to something that just happens when life is life.
It leaves room. It leaves room for the unexpected to happen when you're handling and organizing what is already kind of a regular part of your life. So proactive planning is simply that. If somebody's wanting to know what tool is that, it's pretty much this simple. It's thinking through big picture, things that you know that you're committed to, responsibilities that you know that you have, and figuring out how to put everything that is of priority into your calendar. So you were saying earlier about filling out those applications and things like that. That's normally about March, April, because if you waiting until August, it's kind of a little bit too late, right? So it's understanding that in March and April and those months, I'm going to be really committed to this. But about August, that's lifted. So yeah, I can be a part of the family reunion planning committee, right? But I'm not going to be a part of that in March because I got a lot that I got to do, right? It's just proactively planning. One of the things that you highlighted as well then was just time. If you're trying to proactively plan, sometimes we have to release ourselves from these deadlines and rules. How do you deal with the mental stuff? Most bosses, leaders, we're kind of the perfectionist, overachiever, all this stuff. How do you work through that and allow yourself to breathe and give yourself grace?
That's a great question, and definitely still a work in progress. But when, in terms of like my wellness business, it gets heavy when you think about a goal that you set at the beginning of the year that you're not at the benchmark in June. I wasn't. And so the way grace extended looks for me is, but I wasn't where I was in January.
That's not focusing on what you haven't accomplished.
Correct.
Choosing to focus on what you have.
And look at what I put in place. I have a virtual assistant now.
Yes.
I have systems.
Yes.
I have things. So when this takes off,
yes,
it's going to be epic.
You'll be ready.
So, allowing yourself, extending yourself the grace that I say most people give to other people and not themselves.
Yes.
And I'm talking specifically to my board of directors right now, and anybody in my sphere, that we give it so willingly, but we don't
give
take
it to ourselves.
So, and then what that looks like is, what have I, okay, no, I'm not at the goal. No, I didn't do X and Y, but did I do A, B, C, and how is that looking?
Yeah.
You know, how is that moving me forward to this goal? And maybe it's not going to be December of 24. Maybe it is going to be first quarter of 25. And is that still good?
Yes.
I mean, unless you're talking about deliverables to a client, that's different. But if you're talking about goals that you
set for you. Yes. I think that's important too, because what I hear in there is like releasing ourselves from certain rules and deadlines, but at the same time being disciplined enough to take next steps. And then also these underground successes, because Rachel, oftentimes we set goals and they're all external and what we can see, but getting an assistant and getting organized and creating systems, that's underground success that nobody else perhaps can see, but it's still very critical. Yes, right. And so sometimes when we set the goal for June, we were talking about end results, and we didn't hold space for effort, and effort counts.
Yes.
Setting systems in place, getting organized, getting whatever done that you didn't have before, it counts. And so all of that, you all, when we're talking about trying to live these balanced lives, it's holding space for ourselves to realize, yes, maybe, I don't know, running the marathon is the goal. But many of us who run, we have that in common. Well, I be jogging. I ain't really been running, I be jogging. But we understand that 26.2 may be the goal, 13.1 may be the goal, but you won't get there without first running the 1 minute or the 1 mile. And running the 1 mile counts.
Yes.
So some of you, give yourself grace. Stop being so hard on yourself. Allow yourself opportunity to grow into your goals. Before we go into our break, I also want to just highlight this because I thought it was powerful. You said communication. When people talk about balance, I don't know the last time I heard the communication piece, but your communication piece was to engage those to whom you have certain responsibilities, to clearly articulate. Will you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes. So it's important to not only come to grips with or have a grasp on the things that you want to accomplish and your goals and your calendar and looking at it from a different higher altitude, but then being able to communicate that to the people that it affects and that are looking for you. So your team, your significant other, your kids, and your other board members in your nonprofit space, your fundraising, what all of that looks like, or people who are looking at you to do things for them.
Yes.
Hey, this is going to happen, and I'm so
Yes.
excited about it. But
Yes.
it can't happen in July.
Right. Right.
Maybe not even August, but is there a day in September that
Yes.
I can
Yes.
do that? Talking to the family, I have teenage kids, so
Mm-hmm.
it's easier to communicate with them
Yes.
sometimes.
Yes. Depending. Yes.
So building out that family calendar where you're including them on things you're putting on your calendar, so then they have visibility on when you're going to be there and when you're not. So it doesn't necessarily always have to be a verbal communication, but some way to communicate to them. Now, my
Yes.
husband will say that I have a ways to go on that, but I am not
You're not where
nearly
you
where I
were.
was.
Right. I've grown.
So it works.
Yes.
It works.
Yes.
So then you're not feeling bad
Bad.
because you
Yes.
weren't there at the, or
Yes.
that you weren't there when they got home, or
Yes.
you didn't plan the meal, or you didn't,
Yes.
because you guys
You've
knew.
level set. You've level
right?
set the expectations.
Right.
Yeah. I think it's critical too, Rachel, because you said so many people are counting on you to show up. I think even in the communication, it allows you to articulate what you need so they can show up.
Yes, yes,
Like,
yes,
I'm gonna
yes.
need you to help pack some extra weight or do some this or that, because so the communication piece. So we're gonna get ready to take a break, and when we come back, we're gonna deep dive more into this whole thing that Rachel said about personal board of directors, and then ending with health is wealth, so that we can really land that and you can learn a little bit more about her and what she does and how this shows up in her own world, some steps she had to take to make sure that she was well. But before we go, I want to remind you that we've talked about balance. We've talked about the importance of proactive planning. We've talked about time, big picture, as well as communication. So you leave the dial right here on the amazing 102.5 FM, and we'll be right back with Miss Rachel, Dr. Rachel, all things that. See you in a moment.